Hello, everybody. Welcome back to TARTLE. Welcome. Who'd have ever thunk that Carl Jung could have anything to say about modern man and data?
Mr. McCaig, what I want to get into, Alexander, is this. Whenever we look at data and psychology, why is it so important, and why is data so attached to humanity and human consciousness?
Because a thought precedes absolutely every action on this planet. Everything starts with a thought, whether you want to start a business, whether someone wants to go out there and buy a product. It doesn't matter what it is. Somebody has to think first before they actually will themselves to go do it.
Yes.
It's not will then think, it's think then will, right? So they have to amass this sort of idea of what's going to happen and what they're choosing to do. So when you look at data, the collection of these habits and behaviors, a thought had to preclude that thing. It's something that started before it. So unless you actually go back to the individual, and then once you're at that individual, start to analyze their thoughts independent of everybody else, then you can start to have a proper picture of what's going on. Now, lucky for us today, we have so much computing power. We have the ability to look at someone as an individual and study just that specific individual with a lot of computing power, and then study everybody else with just that amount of focus, and then comparatively analyze them. But instead, we choose to just do a comparative analysis and, put them through some sort of statistical model and say, that's what that person's like. Well, that's just not true. You haven't actually considered the thoughts of that individual. You've just assumed that they belong in a very rigidly defined bucket of what a human being should look like in a statistical model. But with that, it doesn't carry a lot of value. And so what I want to do is I want to share a quote that I think this is like 1955, 1957 that Carl Jung talked about this. And he was talking about the unknown aspects of humanity. But if you focus on it and apply a statistical sense, it actually eradicates the value of the human being, their psyche, their thinking, their behaviors. So you're looking at behavior as a lagging indicator and then comparatively analyzing that behavior into buckets across everybody else en masse and assuming that that derives a value. But if you skip the bucket approach, the statistical flattening of an individual, and you look at them as an individual, as each one independently unique, and then putting the collective together rather than just put it in a collective and define it, it's a totally different value that is derived from that data or from that person through that analysis. And at the same time, you're also respecting that person as a human being rather than just say they're a cog in the wheel. It's like, oh, great, we have a labor force. Well, that's off of the same criteria that we use on cattle.
Yes, exactly.
Does that number define a human being? No, but that's what we do. We even do it with standardized testing. This idea of statistics is starting to define people, but it flattens personality. It flattens the psyche. It flattens the value of a human being. So I want you, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I want to get into the quote because, and we'll kind of break down the quote if that's fine.
Yeah.
And this is Carl Jung. This book was written in the 1950s.
1957.
Right, yeah.
4 years before he died?
Yeah, 4 years before he died. It said the statistical method shows the facts in the light of the ideal average, which you had just talked about, but does not give us a picture of their empirical reality.
So if you talk about empirical reality, what can actually be tested through experience? But through statistics, you don't need the experience. You just say that this is the experience and then define that experience onto people.
And taking out experience out of the human.
Yeah.
You're getting such bad data then.
There's no human.
That would be like having Christmas and take all the emotions out, but you've all assembled.
Everything. But they're at Christmas.
Right.
So then we're just going to define that these people love Christmas. What if you have the worst time at Christmas all the time, but you still go to it? There's no empirical study because you are defining an ideal average.
Yes.
There was no man steps in the same river twice, or just because the average, if someone told you, oh, this river's average 3 feet deep, I still wouldn't walk across it. Well, what if it's an inch deep, but in the dead center, it's 100 feet down?
Well, I know with digital marketing, everything's Bayesian, and we've talked about that before. And we encourage people, if you roll the dice enough, there's going to be that dice is not perfect. It doesn't have a perfect shape to it. So if you roll that dice 100,000 times, you're going to start getting some variables on it
all the time.
So whenever we look at data, that's the whole idea. If I show this ad 100,000 times, and then I get a click-through rate of this, and then from there I get a conversion of this, then I can turn around and throw, demographic, age, location. Then I can start, and we've talked about this before.
That age, that demographic, that person.
I don't need experience.
No, but that's your self-defined reality, rather than letting the individual define the reality of how they measure themselves. Instead, you are measuring them. Jung saw this in 1957, and we're still applying these completely unreal ideas. And when you talk about an average, nobody's average. Every single individual is completely unique.
Well, when we get into experience, it's we did that whole article on telecom when it came to understanding people working from home and that shift from going into a call center and then people actually doing the calls from home and doing the texting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. The first thing that they said was they were worried about the efficiency of it, not the experience that the customer is going to receive and your employee is going to receive.
Correct.
So where like TARTLE, we would want to hit both experiences on that because we know if the experience is great, the ROI is going to be great.
Correct. And if you just rely on a statistical idea, it's not really founded in the truth. Because first of all, statistics aren't perfect. And statistics also don't speak to reality. Statistics try to talk about how we perceive reality through an inflexible model. We're just saying this is how the world works, judging on how we've measured it over time.
And why are algorithms so based off of this archaic viewpoint and then so inflexible?
Well, they're inflexible because the aspects of our scientific progress have been around statistics. Our theories around statistics. When someone calls something a scientific law, it's because statistically it's happened so many times that it becomes improbable for it to happen otherwise.
Yes.
So we become so so absorbed and reliant on statistics, it's eradicated all the beauty and distinct characteristics of this world or individual things, whether it's a rock or a human being, or a bird or an atom. All of these things are special in and of themselves. But when we lump them into statistical models, then we make a theory about the world rather than looking at it empirically through observational experience about what we really know, rather than using statistics to assume that we know.
Yeah, and it's like I was sharing with you, the guy that created the whole, Henry Ford and all of them used it in the sense of taking machines and then taking a person and then taking a stopwatch and then getting it more efficient, the process, more efficient. Yeah. To the point of where it's like, and he even said this, and kind of like a racist comment, like, I don't need these people to think. I need them to do this action.
And that's what it's becoming. Large tech also operates like a state dictator. This is how we want people to think. This is what we want them to buy. There's actually no respect for the human being when you apply them to a statistical model. It's a function of coercion rather than education.
Well, it's also, not to interrupt you, but Alex, this is really important because it's also this whole idea of imposing on someone. Like, for instance, we'll use, I think the Subaru is a great example. And we've talked about this 100 times, so I don't want to get into that example, but it's like, I know you're looking at a Subaru Outback, so I'm going to sit there and hammer you, like literally hammer you with retargeting ads over and over and over and over again. And then I'm going to try to take you from upper funnel, mid funnel, lower funnel, and then to get you to make a purchasing. But I'm assuming right off the bat, I'm assuming because you went to SubaruUSA.com and looked at a car that you're in the market.
Yeah, but you're also forcing people into that statistic.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
You're not allowing them to sit outside of it because that's what you've limited the model to. You've limited everything to
Well, how expensive is that?
It's so expensive.
Where Subaru could come into TARTLE and say, hey, everybody that hits our page, we want to turn around and invite them to TARTLE. And then we're going to ask them, are you how far out? Are you 30 days out? Are you 60 days out? Are you 90 days out?
Yeah.
Are you comparing it to the RAV4? Are you comparing it to Mazda CX-5? Whatever it may be.
And that's in comparison. What about you just asking about their emotional state? Mm-hmm. Are you looking at a car because you're just thinking about the future and what prosperity might look like for you?
Yeah. Is 24 to 36-year-old females that are looking at Outbacks, are they looking at the safety with the car seat in the back seat?
Yeah, like what is
that the number one driver?
What if you have the correlation? It's like, it's not the fact that they're looking at the car and the color and their age, but what if it's like, are you pregnant?
Yes.
Do you have a family on the way?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Right. Oh, that's why you're looking at the car. It has nothing to do with the other comparative aspects of the brand or the price.
Well, that's because
you're only looking at family and safety.
That's because we're taking the empirical reality out of it. And he said this too, while reflecting an indisputable aspect of reality.
Okay, so that's what the statistic is doing. It's reflecting an indisputable aspect of reality. It can falsify the actual truth in a most misleading way.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an aspect of reality, right? But it's a reflection.
Mm-hmm.
It's not taking the actual part of reality. It's just saying, how do we reflect it into a mathematical model? Okay. And then how do we take that and say that the reflection is the truth? That's like saying, I'm going to base my entire life on a mirage. If you're in the desert, are you going to base your life choice of survival on a mirage, or are you going to go to the legitimate oasis over here? What you're doing is you're looking at the statistical model here, but the truth is over here to your left. You're guiding yourself in the wrong direction, even though the compass is telling you to go west.
Yeah, it's like, and we had talked about it before, but these footprints on the moon.
Yeah.
And we don't know if it was like there was some debris, trash, but it's kind of like in a weird pattern, and it looks like there's these crazy footprints on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at the footprints alone, we can sit there and analyze that and analyze that and analyze that, and then come to a conclusion that could be so far off based off of those tracks.
Correct.
But we don't know the true intent of those tracks.
Yeah.
We're assuming and guessing and being passively aggressive, and then we can turn around and say, yeah, those are alien based.
Yeah.
And that's proof on the moon that there was a large alien walking.
Huge.
Mongo
alien. Yeah.
Yeah, a huge alien walking, and then we're going to study, how long it takes for decay, and list goes on and on. But now we've created something. Think about this. Now we've created a reality that's false.
But the thing is,
based off the tracks.
Did you watch the tracks actually occur?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
So you've taken this mirage idea in your mind
Mm-hmm.
with statistics, and you've analyzed it comparatively to something where you never even actually witnessed it happening.
Mm-mm.
So now the individual experience of the creation of that track, or whatever it be, is stripped. It's gone. It actually doesn't matter at that point. You just said what matters is the mirage, is this idea around what we actually think is the truth. And now we're just going to analyze what we think is the truth.
And then what we think is the truth, we've developed algorithms based off of what we think is the truth. Now we're force feeding.
Yes.
That's a great word. Now we're force feeding consumers this false mirage.
There's nothing empirical. There's nothing objective about that experience at all.
The next sentence in this statement, and this is only one paragraph of Mr. Jung, it says, this is particularly true of theories which are based on statistics.
Yeah.
This is particularly true of theories which are based on statistics.
Particularly true. You'll find that is what a statistic is. You're trying to measure the world, but you apply averages to it.
Mm-hmm.
Mean, median, mode, box, whisker. I don't care what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You're applying an idea to something when you really have no individual experience. You're just trying to fill in this experience because you weren't there to experience it.
Mm.
Or you weren't there to speak with the people to have them experience it. That's why you force them into boxes. You thought taking this statistical, economically efficient route was more efficient, but in the end, you've squeezed the value out of it. There's no value left.
Exactly.
You're not analyzing anything, but you're essentially testing against your own model, which already sucks in the first place. It's like, I've applied a valueless model. Oh, we're doing a great job with our valueless model.
Yeah.
How well did you see that mirage? Well, I saw it pretty well, and I also saw a giant elephant walking around the middle of the desert. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. That's just because you thought you did.
No. What you've done is you've created the elephant in the room.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's a mirage. It's this idea in your mind.
Yeah.
It's a delusion of these models. This is a huge part of the problem, and this is why technology has evolved so much, science so much in a statistical sense, but it has left man behind. There's no evolution of man to come with it because we have not met man with the technology. We've actually separated from it. We thought we could take something that was, in a sense, non-human, the statistics, and apply it to define a human being.
You're so right.
Human beings created statistics.
Yes.
Statistics did not create human beings. That's just the logical structure of it. Why do you keep focusing your analytical models, your data sets, your algorithms, all of these things in a comparative sense when it's not truly comparing things properly? You have no empirical evidence.
It's the same. We did that whole episode. It's the same on the consensus. You know, here in the United States, you're interrupting people, and then the people that actually respond, who are they? And this is so interesting. That's why I wanted to say that, because this goes right in hand with it. It says the distinctive thing about real facts, however, is their individuality.
A real fact relies with that individual experience. That's the fact. I cannot apply that experience on everything else. I can't do it. That fact belongs with that individual person. If I go in to stare at a piece of art in a museum, the way I interpret that is going to be different from all the tens of millions of people that go through that art museum.
Well, I mean, it's using the consensus. Here's another fact: is I can sit there if I pull emotion out.
Yeah,
I can sit there and say, well, people in the Midwest just don't fill out the consensus.
How do you know that?
They're disobedient. They're not Americans.
Blanket statements
where they could be, fairly conservative, far right, and have a huge distrust for the government.
Yeah,
so they're not going to fill out any consensus. They're not going to give you information.
They're disobedient in your model.
Yes,
because you created a model about what you thought reality was, and of course they don't fit in it.
Yes,
because it's not a real empirical model that values the individuality of their own facts.
And we could ask them that through TARTLE. We could pay for their response and then understand exactly what that collective human thought is in those different regions.
Because thought defines the action.
Yes. Thought
defines our future. Thought defines that destiny of that individual. Your company is bound by thought.
Yeah, and this statement right here blows my mind on this. That the real picture, this is Mr. Jung, that the real picture consists of nothing but exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
And that, in consequence, absolute reality has predominantly the character of irregularity.
I say this all the time. We're completely irrational all the time.
Yes.
We're always doing whatever the hell we want.
Our purchase patterns are irrational.
We're always doing whatever the hell we want, but they force us into these purchase patterns. Here, let me ask you something. If there's a register when I go to buy something, that is the only way I can go buy it. I'm forced into that model. But otherwise, maybe I have a different preference about how I like to purchase. There's irregularity to it, but statistic forces a regularity that doesn't belong. It's completely unnatural. If I had regular statistical models applied to nature, it wouldn't work. Why? Because every time a flower blooms, every petal is unique.
Yes.
Every pistil is unique.
Yes.
Every stem is unique. Every cloud is unique. If I put a statistical model on what the shape of the next cloud is going to be, it's going to be wrong because every single one is specific to itself. You can't apply statistics to nature like that. Every single person is an exception to the rule. That's because your rules suck. You rewrite your rules all the time. If you truly had an algorithm that gave you a definitive truth, you'd only have to write it once. There wouldn't be companies and all these people coming up with all these different algorithms to analyze something.
Well, it's so amazing, especially because you can take this into the marketing scheme. It's so amazing whenever they assume, and we'll use Subaru again. Just we're not picking on them, but the automotive industry in general. It's so assumed to say, "Oh, okay, you're wanting to purchase a Forester, so I got you like mid funnel. So now I need to push you with discount."
Yeah.
Not value, but discount.
No, they're trying to coerce you into something.
Where like Nike turns around and says, hey, I'll use them an example. Hey, we have an app. You've got to log on there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And by 8:05, all those shoes, that specific customized individual shoe is going to be sold out. Those Jordans are going to be sold out unless you get them within 10 minutes. So they've created scarcity, which is an evolutionary pattern.
Yeah, and it's also a false model.
Yeah.
You're forcing, otherwise I wouldn't be here at 8 a.m. I wouldn't be using your damn app. And you're going to be like, look at our response rate. It's because you're putting this idea of fear and scarcity into the individual and forcing them to do something they otherwise wouldn't do.
Which creates distrust, which creates bots that are purchasing these shoes.
On behalf of the individual.
Yeah, and on behalf of, because the individual, when there's scarcity, you're going to have competition.
So then what do you have? You have a computer analyze a computer, and they both use shit models.
And so what happens to that, to the person that, the actual, not the bot, but the actual person that is legitimately and honestly wanting to purchase that shoe?
You squeeze them out of the market.
Yes.
It's the same thing that's happened in finance. 85% of the trades are all done with computers, maybe more.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, people are trading. And then you use your little financial analysis of like, highs and lows, or, what are they called? Support and resistance levels, Fibonacci.
But so that's a perfect example, because let's say we have 85% of the trading based off Fibonacci model. That model may be totally debunked. But if 85%
trades off of
if
it,
everything's trading off of that creates this false rule he's talking about.
That's precisely correct. And then you don't appreciate the irregularities of it. You create a regular market. You statistically flatten it. And think about the idea of finance. The price goes up or the price goes down. There's no true variation. There's the vectors of which it can go are up and down, but it can't shift left and right.
Well, I think perfect example is this whole idea with GameStop.
Sure.
And then Reddit, a subreddit, and then, from there, all these guys on Robinhood, the young guys on Robinhood just sitting there purchasing and then going against these hedge fund managers, and they're doing it, out of spite or whatever. But the power, people need to understand, and the governments and big tech and all these companies don't want you to understand that. But just as GameStop's just a small version of this, if individuals will unite and get together and understand that 90% they have unity. It's like on the political thing. Most people will agree more than disagree.
Yeah.
Do not allow the media, do not allow governments, do not allow corporations to not just define you, but cause division, because that's what they want. They want fear and scarcity.
Yeah.
Because they want to make profit off of you.
Correct.
And that is the thing that we see here in this, because he says the real picture consists of nothing but exceptions to the rule. And you're an exception to the rule.
And
I am an exception to the rule. I am an individual with free will.
Same with this damn dog here in the room. It's an exception to the rule. And we're like, dog psychology, blah, blah, blah. Everything is different. Everything's completely unique.
The chance of you being born and being in this world, I think, is like 1 in something billion.
Yeah, so why are you putting me in a statistical bucket to say that I'm just like everybody else?
You're not.
It's ridiculous.
And how can we, the people, unite globally and take back our freedom?
The best way you can do that is remember that you are an individual. All of your thoughts are special and unique to you, and that you can come together in unity with everyone else, but you don't have to lose your identity in doing so. Understand you have the free will of choice. You have the free will of thought, and that your thoughts will define that future. And if all of you come together through that collective decision, and you don't give up what it means to be a human being, then you can drive yourselves back into that power of the human being, taking charge of that future, truly evolving to where we need to evolve to.
And how does TARTLE serve this purpose?
TARTLE serves this purpose because you're allowed, as a data buyer, to come meet those individuals who want to sell that information. That is their thoughts. That is their behaviors. That is them being the irregularity and meeting them as that very individual person in this world. Don't meet them as a statistic. Don't meet them as a piece of cattle out in the field. Meet them as a human being. And it solves that because you're respecting them for their thoughts. You're actually analyzing the thought.